All right, thank you. Hi guys. I guess it's a bit weird since you guys can see my screen and you guys cannot see me, right? Um, but anyways, gonna get started. I think we have about 15 minutes. And as thank you again from BlockDown conference for inviting me here. Always a pleasure to talk to you guys. And as for today, I think the main topic that I want to talk about is about decentralized finance, right? DeFi that most people are talking about right now, as well as the role of Oracle and why an Oracle solution such as Band Protocol is such an important piece of infrastructure to the whole DeFi and the whole smart contract ecosystem. So as a quick overview, if you guys not understand what Oracle is, put it simply, an Oracle solution like Band Protocol is essentially a solution that connect blockchain application and smart contract like DeFi to information outside of the blockchain, right? If you write smart contract, it's really difficult, actually impossible for you to actually access information outside of the blockchain itself without relying on some sort of third party or centralized party that bring the data inside, right? And that is one of the main loophole and one of the main point of failure in the whole DeFi ecosystem as well. And that's why at Band Protocol, we aim to solve this issue by using a delegated proof of stake system that essentially have a bunch of data providers around the world who stake the Band tokens and bring the data inside the blockchain. Right now, what kind of data and what kind of these data serve each of the DeFi vertical, we're going to cover briefly on each of these verticals. And if we talk about DeFi, I think a lot of people have been talking about this buzzword for the past couple of months and actually almost a year or two now, right? But if we break it down, roughly into these 4 buckets that we are observing right now. The first one is the stablecoin, right? And as you know, Maker, for example, issued DAI by using Ethereum as a collateral, right? We're going to talk into each of these use cases and where the Oracle is needed. The next one is lending, right? Where you have Compound, Aave, DYDX, B0X, and many other more solutions that are coming to market right now. Again, really similar to stablecoin. In order for this lending to work, the protocol itself and the smart contract need to be able to determine the amount of loan, the amount of collateral that is already issued in the system. Right? The third part is derivative. So essentially, the abilities to mint some tokens that represent something, right? Most likely something of a real world asset, right? Whether that be stock, whether that be bonds, like ETF, commodities, and other assets. So things like synthetics, Nexus Motion, which is actually an insurance, but you can think of it as a derivative as well. This also requires Oracle to function. And then lastly, we talk about decentralized exchange, right? Kyber network, Bancor, Loopling, or perpetual protocol, which is essentially a decentralized perpetual swap. A lot of these start to rely more on Oracle usages, whether to try to minimize price slippage, whether to minimize impermanent loss, or to determine funding rate. Again, we're going to go into each of these vertical really briefly. And as you can see, the total value locked in DeFi has been growing exponentially. And a lot of people talk about these DeFi as being decentralized, right? But if you look deeper into each of these protocol, again, what they share commonly is that they all need access to a reliable Oracle, some sort of service that brings some sort of real world data into the smart contract so that it can operate the logic by itself, right? Now we're going to go into some of the vertical. I'm sure a lot of you guys are already familiar with stablecoin like MakerDAO, right? This is actually really simple. The way Maker worked, put it simply, you put up a collateral like Ethereum's, the smart contract determine how much of that is in dollars. Let's say $150, so that it would issue $100 worth of DAI, right? To make sure that these DAI are fully secure, right? Now, in time of volatilities, if Ethereum price fluctuates, the Oracle, such as Band, we have to report these data on chain really frequently to make sure that the smart contract can update itself. And if the collateral value go down, it needs to be able to liquidate some of that in order to make sure the system stay liquid, right? So this is one of the earliest use cases in Oracle in DeFi. Right now, Maker opt for say a federated group of chosen validators who can report price. And I think in the future, they're opening up this function as well to make it much more public and decentralized in the future. Lending is actually quite similar to stablecoin in the sense that, I mean, you think of Maker, right? It's actually almost like lending where you put up Ethereum and then they lend you a stablecoin, right? In the name of DAI. With Compound, with Aave, again, this is just an example. The similar use case is, somebody put up a collateral and able to take out loan in other asset, right? Now, with this, it's actually even trickier than Maker, because in Maker, you only track the collateral issues, right? In this case, you need to track both the collateral and the rate of exchange between the collateral and the loan itself. Because again, if the loan value actually go up, let's say I borrow ETH and it actually go up, then I may not be able, or actually go down, we may not be able to pay back the collateral that is issued, right? So a lot of these different use cases, again, will depend on a reliable oracle like BAN to constantly report the data. And if the oracle is actually malfunction, stop reporting the data in the case of, let's say, the Black Thursday, or in the case of congestion. This become really, really problematic because some of this loan may become illiquid or essentially become a bad loan, right? And nobody is able to liquidate that. Leading to the whole system collapse, and that's a really potential scenarios that can happen in the future, and that's why as we talk to a lot of these DeFi projects, we need to make sure that they use a really reliable oracle, that they use a really reliable method to determine how they function in the system, because otherwise it can lead to a really, really bad result where users lost millions of dollars, and that's already happened in the case of MakerDAO in the Black Thursday. Third part is margin lending. Again, this is an example, right? So really similar use case where people put up a collateral, let's say $100, and they go up 5x on margin, let's say $500. Now, if this position actually go down, let's say into $400, the system needs to liquidate that, right? And again, as a smart contract, it has no idea what is the value of the position right now. Somebody has to tell them that, right? And that's a role of an oracle, and that's a role of BAN protocol, and what we need to do. Again, really, these I guess use cases of Oracle are really, really similar in the sense that we track crypto prices across different blockchain, and we constantly feed them into Ethereum, into Cosmos ecosystem, into Icon, Waves, and different other blockchain, so that a similar function can exist across multiple blockchain right now. The fourth part is derivative, right? So again, the abilities to mint some token that represent real world asset. Right. I'm just going to ignore the slide right now. But essentially, think of it this way, right? If somebody is able to issue some token that represent the value of Apple stock or any stock in the world, that will allow anyone with internet access to actually invest in a lot of these assets in a frictionless manner, in a really cheap manner, right? And that is impossible to do in a traditional financial system. And what is an oracle needed for? Of course, they need it for the exchange rate, right? The rate of the price of these commodities, of stocks, of ETF, and these other real world asset prices. So this is the beginning of oracle going beyond just crypto prices. And this is actually really important. We start to see a lot more of these use cases coming up. I think Synthetic was one of the first. You're seeing UMA, you're seeing a lot more. I can say that there are at least 4 or 5 different protocols that are coming to market in the next few months that we have been working with them. Again, with an oracle being a really integral part of these DeFi system. The fifth part, decentralized exchange. If you guys have been following BAN, you will see that recently we have been partnering a lot of these decentralized exchanges like Kyber Swap, like Loopring, and many more in the pipeline. Right now, what do we need the oracle for? I think there's a few use cases. The first part that we talk about here is essentially using oracle in the front end. Right, and this is something that most people don't think about when they think about oracle, because oracle is mostly used at the protocol level. But this is one of the first use cases where we actually use it in the front end, which is actually not related directly to smart contract. If you are a trader and you trade on Kyber Swap, for example, you're not going to rely on essentially looking into the smart contract and tell you, the exchange rate of your trade, right? you actually rely on the front end, which is the website, which is essentially really centralized, right? A lot of these front end websites like Uniswap, like KyberSwap, Loopring, these are hosted by a centralized entities, normally by the team themselves. And the rate of exchange that is displayed there is essentially really centralized, and is actually maintained by the team itself. And in some instances, these failed out, right? Sometimes the rate of exchange doesn't get updated. Sometimes the rate of exchange is actually wrong compared to the smart contract. And this is essentially become really bad as well, because as a trader, you rely on that information for your trade, right? So what happened is with BAN, we actually issue a price feed for a lot of these exchanges so that they don't need to maintain their own architecture, and then they rely on the price feed that is fed by BAN protocol itself. So with KyberSwap, we recently just integrate almost 93 price feed, essentially supporting almost all the tokens that are listed on KyberSwap. So anyone can see if there is a big slippage or not, right? Essentially, if you look at this bottom left, what if you do a big trade and there's a big difference between the quoted price and the reference price that we give them, which is essentially being fed from a lot of these centralized exchanges, then traders can make an informed decision whether to do that trade or not, right? Similarly with Loopring as well, we do a price oracle that feed the price and the last updated price into the front end itself, so that the users don't have to rely on this particular team, but they know that a lot of this information are actually decentrally curated by BAN protocol. Last part, and this is actually quite interesting because if you look at the data from centralized exchanges, you will see that future market like perpetual swap actually has a lot more volume than spot exchanges in many cases, right? And traditionally, these are really centralized by BitMEX, FTX, right? And now a lot more projects are coming to market that bring this perpetual swap into decentralized world, right? DeFi. And what is needed is essentially the funding rate. If you guys have been know about perpetual swap, essentially if you buy or sell this perpetual swap, whether you go long or you go short, there will be a difference between this price and the spot price, right? Because some people will put a premium on that, right? Let's say if everyone want to short this particular tokens, like Filecoin, for example, recent example, the price on that perpetual swap is actually much lower than the spot price itself. And the thing is, this cannot exist forever. Eventually, the price gap has to close. And the way the protocol forces these gap to close is essentially one party needs to subsidize the other party. And this is known as the funding rate itself, right? And the funding rate is actually, in simple term, you see the difference between the spot price and the mark price, right? Which is essentially what is being traded on the perpetual swap. And one side has to basically subsidize the other. So in this case, perpetual protocol, I believe this has to be calculated almost every hour as a funding rate. And as a BAN protocol, as an oracle, again, we feed all these prices of these different tokens as a reference price, known as the index price. And then you have the perpetual price, which is actually what is being traded on perpetual protocol. And then that is used as to calculate as a funding rate itself, right? So again, this is just one particular example. There are many more protocol like Injective and many other more protocol, not going to name them, that will require an oracle. Right? So just to wrap it up, I think I'm almost out of time. As you can see, smart contract on any blockchain right now can use BAN protocol to query data and receive this on a really real-time basis. We update almost every data within 6 seconds, and this is done because we done all this oracle computation through BAN chain itself, which is built based on the Cosmos SDK. And as you can see from this, I guess really short presentation, people talk a lot about DeFi. People talk a lot about this different vertical and different spectrum of DeFi in the market right now. But what is important is, as you can see, almost every single use cases of this DeFi will require an oracle usage to some extent. Some are using it at a protocol level, really crucial to the operation of the smart contract itself, like lending and stablecoin. Some rely them on front-end interface like DEXs. Some rely them to operate the entire protocol itself. Right. So, and this is essentially why Oracle is such an important component of DeFi, and actually really important component of the whole smart contract itself. without a reliable Oracle smart contract, use cases are fairly limited, and that's why at BAN, we work really hard to make sure that our solution can meet the growing demand of these different use cases, whether that be more data supported, whether that be more frequency of data, whether that be the blockchain that we support them on. Just gonna wrap it up here. And hopefully you guys can follow us on our main channel to see our updated recent updates. We work quite closely with a number of DeFi projects as well as smart contract to make sure it's become much more useful and become much more reliable and safe for a lot of these users to use. So I guess I'm kind of out of my time. I'm gonna stop the presentation here. I think there's a small Q&A at the end, if I'm not mistaken.